Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I have Dr. Fareeha Al Siddiq. She's a medical expert at Biotricity, like electricity, but Biotricity. The website is also Biotricity, BIOTRICITY.com. I'm going to talk about advancements in remote cardiac health monitoring. So, Fareeha, thanks for coming.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Richard.
In terms of remote monitoring, I guess the personal experience, like 6 years ago, I had my heart was skipping some beats. So, I went to the heart doctor. They gave me like a Holter monitor and stuff to wear, and it was like this bulky, real pain in the ass type thing to wear.
Yeah.
So what are you working on? Are you working on advancements to that kind of stuff? Like how would you encapsulate what you're doing?
Yeah. So, I think, so at Biotricity, we are a remote patient monitoring company. We focus on diagnostic and post-diagnostic solutions with near real-time monitoring. So just as you described your situation, historically, this is sort of what it's been. As you go in, it actually happened with my baby sister as well. She was having some heart palpitations and things like that. She was thrown on a Holter monitor, told to wear this Walkman type device, come back 2 weeks later and, get a report and sort of see what happened. And what we really focus on is not really providing a clinical service, but providing a technology service. So, and again, I think people get confused with monitoring versus recording. So what you are describing, Richard, is really recording. It's passive recording, and you get the report 2 weeks later and things like that. On our monitor, you put a patient on. So let's say a physician has a patient that has some nondescript symptoms. I'm feeling dizzy, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling my heart thumping, or I just overall don't feel good. And they've done a 24-hour, EKG and nothing has shown up. So they say, okay, well, let's put them on a device for, whatever, a week, 5 days, 14 days. And that device is near real-time monitoring. And so if that patient has an event or something life-threatening or something urgent, immediately that physician is notified and told that, hey, this sort of arrhythmia or event came in, this patient, then the doctor becomes aware of what they need to do and either sends that patient off to the hospital or has them come back into the office earlier. And then treatment and diagnosis, you get a head start on it. So that's sort of where our whole niche is right there.
Is that data shared with the patient in real time, or would that freak them out? Where they can look and say, oh my God, what's my heart doing?
No, so it doesn't, no, it does not alert the patient. What the patient does is when they are feeling a symptom, they can press a button on the device and pick what they're feeling. So for example, we give like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like, are you feeling dizzy? Are you feeling whatever? So that if they're having an event, the doctor can associate that with some kind of symptom. And then if it is urgent, we call the physician or the clinic, and then the clinic reaches out to them because again, you don't want to freak out the patient and you want the physician to look at things thoroughly before the event, after the event, during the event, and really make a sound clinical assessment.
So is this in use right now in the field?
It is. We are in over 100 clinics. We've done, I think, about 13,000 patients so far since we've started. And so it's actively being used, and we are, constantly improving things based on feedback. Clinicians have their own portal that they can log into, and they can see all their active studies as well as any reports that they need to see for different patients, and any kind of notifications they've received is all there. They also have an app that they can see it on as well.
So what are some interesting stories and data that's come out of this?
I think the interesting stories is really just related to patient care. There's been at least a couple, especially during the pandemic, where we've had a notification come in from monitoring and the patient had a life-threatening arrhythmia. Patient was, hospitalized and had a pacemaker put on within, 90 minutes of us getting the notification. And so I think the importance of this type of technology and this type of way to access medicine really is, and diagnostics is even more important given the pandemic. As you are probably well aware, heart disease is the number one killer in our country. The pandemic has only amplified that. Elderly patients are now not wanting to go into clinics because of the scare of COVID, because of other chronic conditions that they have. So I think that we've really been able to see the need. I mean, anecdotally, and you launch and you sort of get into clinics, but there's nothing like a pandemic to give you a reality check about the gaps in our system.
What are the gaps in the system? Like, what have you identified as by having this device?
So I think the gap is accessibility, right? Historically, players in the Holter monitoring, and the MCT field, really, they pick healthier populations or states where there's healthier people, or populations where they are states that are highly populated, and then they form, they set up a clinic or they set up their headquarters and things like that. None of that is something that we are really interested in doing. Our job is, again, we're not offering a clinical service, we're offering technology. So it's to increase accessibility. Doesn't matter where you're located in the United States, you should be able to put on a device from Biotricity and get monitored if needed. So really empowering the physician and the patient to have access to that device, whether we have, a brick and mortar building there or not.
So what does the device look like? Like, how big is it? Where does it go?
It's the size of it's smaller than I would say it's the size of a smartphone, and it's Bluetooth connected and works like a cell phone, basically. So as long as you have cell phone service in your house or near your house and you're wearing the device, it constantly sends data up to the cloud as long as you have it on, it is sending data up to the cloud based on notifications and thresholds that your physician has set. So if you fall above or below that threshold and something is going on with you, your physician is immediately notified, and then your clinic, will be reaching out to you.
Well, I mean, maybe it might be better to have a redundancy and tie it into like cell networks too, maybe through a smartphone, a pairing so that if Bluetooth gets spotty, like I imagine the heart's beating, and what if it goes like a phone call? How do you know that it's not the reception that's causing the strange readings and not the heart itself?
So it already does that, and so we don't really have an issue with that.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it already does that. So we can very easily tell what is not the actual heart and what is sort of movement. I mean, outpatient monitoring always has, like you move a lot, the wires shift, things like that. And it's an FDA approved device. So it's gone through the FDA and their entire database and system of being able to predict heart rhythms and look at heart rhythms at, 99% accuracy, and be able to tell the difference from when it's exactly what you said, something like movement or like beep, 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 or actually the heart.
Okay. What's been the patient experience? Like, what do they tell you? People that have had, let's say, Holter monitors, and now they have this, like, do they tell you they like it better or it's the same? Or
So I think we've heard, they like it better because it's a lot less bulkier than the Holter monitor, but of course, nothing is perfect until you get feedback. So we've had feedback on, nobody likes to wear devices with wires. That's always going to be the feedback that, if you could make this thing wireless, that would be amazing, which is in the works and coming out shortly. And we have a whole range of sort of next gen products and improvements based on patient feedback. But overall, the patient feedback has been very positive. It's easy to use. It fits in a little pouch that you can wear anywhere. And so the majority of it has been really positive, and patients like the fact that they don't have to leave their house and they can be monitored. And the other thing that we're doing during the pandemic is having devices sent directly to patients, so they don't even have to go to their clinic to get it picked up, and their doctor can write a prescription. It's sent to them directly through us, and then they deal with our customer service team to sort of get hooked up and do all of that. And so we're really trying to reach as many people as we can and help as many people as we can, especially during the pandemic.
Okay, so people like it better. I mean, do they take it off to shower? Do they sleep with it? Like, what, how do people carry it around in an effective way?
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
So they have a pouch that they can wear. So it can either attach by a belt clip on their pocket. They can wear it around their neck. They can wear it in the pouch and hang it from their belt. So there's a few different ways to do it. And yes, you're not going to wear it 24 hours a day. You can't shower with it on. So people take it off to shower. People take it off to charge once a day. And so those activities of daily living will always happen. And so that's why, depending on how many hours of monitoring the physician wants, we can monitor anywhere from 1 day or 30 days.
Oh, okay. And then they come back, they return the device, and then it gets cleaned and ready for the next person. Huh?
Right.
Okay. What do you see as like the biggest benefit? There's more accessibility, there's better, easier monitoring, but like clinically, what do your clinics tell you? What do the doctors tell you? What do they experience as they care for their patients?
So the biggest benefit is, again, getting a jump start on diagnosis and treatment. I mean, that's hands down the best thing, because now you can recall your patient sooner. You can change their medication dosage sooner. You can put them on medication that maybe wasn't working and change it. So that's really been the number one feedback from physicians, is really, I can actually diagnose my patients quicker and faster and with less hassle, and bring them back there. And then again, we want to expand into sort of the post-diagnostic phase and the chronic care. So once you get diagnosed, and then after that, to continuously support the patient through managing their chronic disease. So really, it's coming along with the patient along their journey once they have been diagnosed. So that's the other thing that the physicians really like, because we have a telemedicine platform as well. So they can have the appointment through telemedicine during, obviously, COVID, and then have the device sent to their patient. Any issues or any diagnostics that they're looking for, if it is present in the patient, they can find that out sooner rather than later, and then go on and take care of their patient the way they want to.
So what's the next step? What's the next iteration to make this even better?
So the next step is really, again, in that post-diagnostic phase, where once you get diagnosed on the BioFlux device, what is the next step? So how are you going to now manage whatever heart condition that you have? So we have a platform and consumer device coming out for that, which is, again, medical grade data being available to the patient to be able to say, okay, I was diagnosed on this device. I'm familiar with their app. I'm familiar with their software. My doctor's familiar with their software. And now I'm going to use the products to continuously manage my condition. I mean, we have this for diabetes, but we don't have it for heart disease, which is shocking, given that it's the number one killer. And almost, even when you look at diabetes, 50% of diabetics have some kind of heart disease going on. So I think it's just, as we move, the next step is really to get into chronic care and move that further and focus on following the patient from diagnostics all the way to post-diagnostics, while making it as least cumbersome for the physician as possible. I mean, obviously, a lot of these plans have shifted and changed and thought about with this pandemic that we're all stuck in. And so we're taking all the feedback and learning as we go and improving as we go. But that's the main focus. The focus is really to help that patient all along the way, not just diagnosis, but post-diagnostics.
Oh, what about like Fitbits and Apple Watches and things like that? Do you have a piece of the puzzle where you could integrate with them to look at, chronic situations?
Yes. So that's already all been integrated. So we have applications, like we had a contract actually specifically for pain management, because they wanted us. We had a group that really needed something for pain management. And that initial platform is integrated with all of that, all of the fitness apps and watches that are out there. I think it's the top 5 or 6, but definitely Fitbit, Samsung, the Apple Watch, all of that. So that you can't really do chronic disease management without being able to integrate with some of those fitness devices and all of that. And we also have other things that we would integrate with as well, or other devices, if it's like a blood pressure cuff, or if it's something like that. Really depends on the disease profile. For cardiac, of course, it would be blood pressure and the fitness devices and all of that. And, with other chronic diseases, it would be different things, but that is all stuff that we believe is imperative to incorporate.
For non-heart conditions, but there may, for which there may be a signal in, a person's heart pattern.
Yeah.
Diabetes, et cetera. Are you looking for opportunities like that where, again, it may not be, your data would be very useful to giving a bigger picture of what's going on with the person, but it may not be specifically just heart related.
Right. And so that's where the chronic disease piece comes in. And with chronic care, it's really 2 or more chronic conditions. That is how the reimbursement works as well. That is how things are managed. So it's really designed to, depending on what your primary condition is, that is how your display would be, and then what your secondary conditions are. And so your physician would get a report for everything. So it wouldn't be just cardiac focused or just diabetes focused. It would still get everything they need to see for whatever conditions you have. If you have absolutely no conditions, then you can use our consumer facing device if you just want to monitor your heart and all of that, just for the sake of monitoring it and wanting to know, like if you're a fitness guru or something like that, and you just want to know some extra information, or you're really into the quantified self, then you can use the consumer facing product and monitor yourself that way. But that really doesn't have anything to do with interfacing with clinics and other things.
Okay, very good. So what's the best way for people to find out more about Biotricity and, see if their doctor is using it? Where can they go from here?
I think the best way is to, I encourage them to visit our website at www.biotricity.com and sort of check things out and see and you can just ask your physician if they're using it. If they're not, we have a number, 1-800 number, a customer service number on the website, as well as you can email info@biotricity.com if you want your physician to look into it. And then somebody from our team will reach out and kind of connect with them and walk them through whatever they want to know.
Okay, very good. Well, Fareeha, thank you for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great rest of your afternoon, and thank you for having us.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.